Hey everyone, before we start this week's episode, I just want to let you know that I've started a Patreon. Starting at $1 a month, you can join to get episodes earlier, get exclusive content, free merch, voting on who you want on the podcast, plus more. It's totally up to you if it's something you're interested in, and it helps me a ton to continue producing these episodes for you. Once again, thank you for the ongoing support and enjoy this week's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Louven Podcast. Today I'm extremely excited to be interviewing Jack from the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets. Psychedelic Porn Crumpets are from Perth, Australia, releasing their first album back in 2016. Since then, they've released 5 albums, including their latest record, Night Gnomes, which released earlier this year in April. How are you today, Jack?
Good, Brody. How you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. With all of these interviews, I like to begin at the start of your music career. If you can remember any, what is one of your first musical memories?
I was playing in a band when I was like 9. I think it was like a school band. I was obviously a school band, but parents used to drink in the local pub. So I grew up in England, and like the two sort of boys were the same age as me, who were like mum's best friends or dad's best friends as well. Matt and Sam. We had this band called Last Man Standing, and we just used to like jam. I don't know, like Fridays, Saturdays. But if everyone was at the pub, we'll go like jam, and then we'd like walk back up, go get a Coke or something later at night. But we got to, for like a Christmas present, all the parents like chipped in together and got us to record like a 5-track EP. I remember that when I was like 10, being like, we're gonna have a record deal, like it's sick. We had all these the songs were so weird, but it was so fun. So I played bass in that, and pretty much played bass for like the entirety of playing in bands through high school in Australia and then after school. And Porn Crumpets was pretty much one of the first projects I actually played guitar on. So I think that was I used all the guitar ideas that I've been saving up for other projects on this one.
Yeah.
Which turned out all right.
You mentioned that like you started with bass and you played guitar with the Porn Crumpets. You're also like singing as well. Is there any other instrument you play?
I gave drums a bit of a whirl, like back when I was living at home. I think it was just like way too loud to be playing. Like I don't know. I think most a bit of when you're more creative, like it seems to be like sort of the later hours, or when you've got like your ideas and if you want to record. So as when I moved out, I had a barn, I had my drum kit set up, and there was this guy called Steve who used to live in a block of apartments behind us. And I'd always walk down at like, to be fair, it was like 2 a.m, and I'd be like bashing away. And poor bloke was there in like a singlet and a cornetto. He's like, shut the fuck up. And so, yeah, I'm sorry, Steve. But we kind of became like close. And I think it was like, if he hadn't sort of told me to stop playing drums, I probably wouldn't have started focusing more on recording and actually trying to like use headphones to record rather than my monitors and bits and pieces. So I was aiming a lot to try and keep the noise down, but in turn like recording heaps more, which was sort of real helpful in later years. And even now, like I still find it a lot easier to do like headphone mix and then studio mix and then see where it's sort of sitting. So
yeah,
if it wasn't for Steve, there you go. Yeah, I'm still bashing on.
How did Psychedelic Porn Crumpets start in the beginning?
So it was originally like just a solo project that I was doing at uni. So one of our lectures, like I was studying graphic design, and we had this project where it was to brand, like it was one of those classic ones, just like brand a band or brand like a movie or rebrand something. And I think like we were also like at the time, I think this was like 2010 maybe 2011. Yeah. And so Tame Impala was like huge in Perth, and I was like, man, I'm going to make some band that's like a piss take on them. And so I was like, I'll call it Psychedelic Porn Crumpets. And I think our lecturer was like, oh, like, do you have any music to accompany this? So it must have been a bit later, maybe it was 2012. And I was like, oh yeah, like I'll see what I can sort of come up with. And I was working on Marmalade March, Cubensis, and Cornflake. And I showed Tim, and it was just like this weird brand, and then had some music. But I remember Tim, like my mate Tim, he's gone on to do some amazing stuff, and he actually started designing shirts for us a while ago, and still does. And he was like, you should actually do this, like you should think about doing it. And then I found, like, I went for a job interview at this place called Louven Gallery. And the guy, Jamie, who eventually played bass with us at the beginning and became a manager after that, was showing us his music, and he was like, oh, like, what have you got? And I just had these 3 songs. It's like, oh, like, this is what I've been working on. And we met at a June Rats gig. Like, it was so just by fluke. And then he was like, I think you should actually, like, try and get these songs together. So I was like, all right. So I played with Danny, our drummer, in an old band. I met Luke Rish through a mutual drug dealer, and then we found Gary, the bass player, and we were just, I think we were just recording and jamming, and we had about 6 or 7 songs before we even played, like, the first show that was going to be on the album. And then when we did start eventually gigging, I think, like, the first release we sort of had was the record. So it sort of just, like, came from then, and then we started building and gaining momentum after that.
Yeah. Speaking about that first record, what were some of your main influences at the time? You mentioned Tame Impala earlier.
Yeah, there was a lot of was like the Perth music scene, like the local scene. There was a band called Hideous Sundemon, which were amazing, and they were like our heroes, but they were the same age, and they were like, we were playing in older bands on, like, Tuesday night somewhere, like a dimly lit sort of dungeon, and they were having, like, the big gigs, and we would just, like, go and watch them. And there was a band called Love Junkies and Abby May, and Pond as well. And I think we were, like, sort of just taking influences from the Perth scene, because we just wanted to sort of, like, carve our way through that. And then Tame sort of did, like, a bit more electronic stuff, and Pond went off and did their electronic thing, and obviously King Gizzard, Unknown Mall Orchestra, even like Babe Rainbow, OCs. So it was a lot of, like, Australiana crossed with that California kind of style. I mean, it just so happened that, like, I think when we sort of went and hit the English market, like, those other bands were sort of doing different things, and it was sort of like maybe just us and King Giz that were doing this. Well, there's a lot of other bands doing the heavy stuff, but, like, from the Australian market, like, it was still sort of really fresh there. And it was really fresh in America as well. So we just sort of got pretty lucky at the time and place where we were and what we were doing. And then eventually when we came back to Australia after that, it started getting, like, quite a lot bigger than it was previously.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I remember, like, finding you guys around, like, 2017 or something like that. And it was from going through all these Perth bands like Tame Impala and Pond, and I found, like, Love Junkies and all that. And I was so surprised how many cool bands were over there, because I'm so used to, in Adelaide, it's all, like, indie bands and cover bands, and that's about it. But so beginning in Perth, what was it like starting a band at the time there?
It was pretty, like, the scene was huge. So there was, like, they used to do these Battle of the Bands things called the Big Splash. And I think there was one previously, and Hideous Sundemon had won that. They beat this band called Old Blood. There was a band called Kitchen People and Dream Rooming, which eventually went on to do Boat Show. So that was that project. And then in our year, there was, like, so many other good bands, but everyone would go watch that. And there was this big venue called the Bakery, and that was, like, the last show that played the Bakery. And I think it was just such heavy guitar music. Like, that was sort of the scene. Like, it was a lot punkier, but, like, riffy, and psych music was sort of, like, the whole thing. So, like, the Porn Crumpets was sort of a way to be like, oh, well, we're just kind of taking the piss out of it. But then it became serious, and we're like, fuck, we got to kind of carry on with this. Like, but maybe start taking it seriously. And it was like, there was so many good acts to put on a bigger sort of, like, event. So, like, rather than doing just 2 band headlines or whatever, 2 band bills, it was like there'd be 5 bands playing or 6 bands playing, and everyone would have the big projector up, and we started playing, like, 200 cap rooms, and then it went up to, like, 300 and 400 and 500, like, pretty quickly throughout that year.
Oh, wow.
And we had, there was actually a big moment where we were in Sydney for, like, a tour. And Rish, so our guitar player, ended up getting, like, chicken pox and like bit on the face by this spider. And so we had a show booked. So it was our headline show, which was in this 200 cap room at Mojo's in Frio. And then, but we had to cancel that show because obviously Rich was too sick to play. But we sort of postponed the ticket sales for the next possible date we could get. And it wasn't for another 4 or 5 months. So we were just like, fuck, like, all right, we'll try and find somewhere else. And as the momentum got big, we pushed those tickets to like the Rosemount and managed to sell out that at like $550. And from then, it's just felt like it's always like, that is the place in Perth. Like if you sell it out, like it's a good sort of established level. So
yeah,
and I think we've just been playing the Rosemount for like the last 4 years now, which is like kind of funny because it's just a huge jump up to other rooms. Like you've got to do 600 and then the next is like 2,000 somewhere. So you just still trying to break that market. But I kind of like the small gigs. I'd rather play like a 500 cap room, like the best. It's perfect. You still got a big atmosphere and the sound's good, and you sort of still feel a bit closer than I remember doing a lot of the some of the support shows we did where we did Royal Blood, and they played at like Horden Pavilion in Sydney. It's like 4,000 people. You're just like, what the fuck is this? It's huge, man. Like they're massive shows, but I suppose they're comfy, but we'd just be shitting our pants up there. Like if that was us, take us back to like 10 people.
Yeah. Yeah, I was quite happy to see like for Adelaide, you guys are playing at the Lions Art Factory. And I've been there a few times and it's such a good sized venue, I reckon. Like it's that perfect size for it to be small, but also if it's packed, it feels massive at the same time. Yeah.
I think we played there a couple of years ago as well. Like, and Helen enjoyed that show. Like, they got a great little downstairs area as well, with like a PlayStation and stuff. So back on the FIFA
train. So you've recently released your 5th album, Night Gnomes. What was the writing process like for this album?
So a lot of it, like, the more I've sort of been doing interviews, the more I've sort of realized it's sort of like the moodier brother of Shiger. Like they're both sort of like lockdown records, but I suppose I don't want them to sort of be reflected like that eventually when we all get onto normal life, and then you look back and it's like, oh, it's not like this COVID record, but like the first, you can't sort of get away from it in a way because it has been everyone's existence for the last 2 years. So, and especially in Australia where it seems to be sort of like it's carried on a lot longer than say America or most of Europe. But so I think like the first Shiger record was us sort of reflecting on sort of what life was, and you still had that sort of adrenaline to be like, sweet, we'll release these heavier songs and then start playing them again. And as everything sort of kind of continued to just be stagnant, it was like, oh my god, like, are we ever going to be a band again? Are we going to do this? And so a lot of the songs became a bit darker and moodier and a bit more existential, where you're just like, what is our future? Like, so it was it was all like a pinch of salt, and everything wasn't like actually sort of what was going on, because to be fair, it was like the best 2 years of my life. Got everything together, and actually got a good routine down, and it felt healthy for the first time in years. And then so Night Names was almost just a way of sort of getting all that sort of carnage out and into sort of music form, so you didn't have to feel it. It was just like a release, and here it is. And but then now it's like getting to the point where we do play the songs, like I feel like, fuck, like so enjoyable. Like we were doing Lava Lamp Pisco the other day, and there's a lot of the songs, I mean, like Bubblegum Infinity, we're just like, what the fuck is that track? It's such a horrid pop song. You're just like, oh, it's so grim. I just never want to sing that ever. But it made a time where it was like, I don't know, it was just sort of upbeat, energetic, but with a bit of dark, I don't know, undertone to the track. But I feel like Night Names is just it's just a nice little way of us reflecting on what has been and what was going on, but also, I don't know, we just needed to carve it out so that we can move on and just start working on different projects now.
Yeah, for sure. For the artwork of Night Gnomes, it's quite different compared to all of the other albums of yours. Is that artwork from you, or is that from someone else?
Yeah, that's from Ben Giles. So he also did the whatchamacallit record. So yeah, we had him, and then we had a different guy, Sergeant Slaughtermelon. That's his name. He did the Shiger record. And I think I was just like, I don't know, I remember seeing Ben's artwork, and he said he'd lost the piece, or his house got flooded or something.
Oh, right.
And the actual piece itself was gone. And it's like, so he had this photo, and I was like, oh, it'd be really, because I loved it, and I was like, I always wanted to use it for something.
Yeah.
And he was like, and then we spoke, and we're like, so if we could use it for Night Names. It was like brilliant. And that was like before any sort of songs were sort of conceived. It was like, we knew that was going to be the artwork. So I just remember studying it and just be like, fuck, this is weird. It's like dark. So I was like, it's nice to sort of reflect the record around it. And we haven't done that before. So it's sort of nice to be, you already know the artwork exists, and then you can sort of build that sort of album to curate it together.
Yeah.
And I feel like they fit really nicely. It is just he just obviously took a bunch of old paintings, spliced them up, and cut bits and pieces, and just made his own wash. So,
yeah.
But I dig that. Yeah, I like his style.
Yeah, I think that the record definitely fits the artwork for that, and especially the visualizer as well. It like all comes to life. That looks really cool.
Well, yeah.
Compared to your other albums, you were saying before how it's a bit like heavier and moodier. Was that like more of a gradual evolution to your sound, or was it just how you were feeling, sort of thing?
I think so. I think for me, it's like, what haven't we done? Like, because we could have just kept doing the 70s thing, and then we could have kept doing like a bit more upbeat sort of riff tracks that are just like, but we have so many pumpy songs. It's funny, like doing the set list now to when we do play live, just like, like the things, like, yeah, just so chaotic and, what's the word? I can't even think about it. Like relentless, where you're just there and it's like the next one, the next one, the next one. So it's like trying to sort of space it out a bit and be like, all right, where can we go? Like that still sounds like Porn Crumpets, but take it into some sort of, have a bit of a breather in some parts where it's just not all heavy.
Yeah.
But then doing that, I think like, I don't know, it feels like you just want to get heavier. Like, I don't know, like you see, like Shiger was so lighthearted and sort of like on the nose. It was very, I don't know, like it had a lot of pop sensibility in sort of writing process.
Yeah.
And it was also like, I was really happy with a lot of the structures. Like it felt like a good song, like everything was sort of packed well together. That for me, it was like, how do we learn to write a song? I feel like the first record was just, I was listening to so much Mars Volta and Tool and Carnival, and really like how everything was like shifting. There wasn't any structure to a song. And then I was like, actually, what is the song? And going back to like, is it just first chorus? You need to get that, and then how do you break off and do bits and pieces? And so like, yeah, Night Names was just this way of sort of being like, all right, I feel like we've learned the basics now. It's taken us 4 records to get there. So the 5th album, we sort of try and do some other thing and use the whole album sort of the listening experience.
Yeah.
So now it's like, I don't know, I feel like I'm trying to go weird again, where it's like beforehand it was like, all right, the listener is someone, but I don't know, it's just more like, I suppose if I find enjoyment of it, and I was thinking maybe too much about other people, where to even now I started doing this other project with an old housemate where we're just writing almost like, it started off just writing garbage, being like, let's write pop garbage. And then you're like, it's actually fun. It's like real therapeutic. It's like, I know how, because you know how the song goes. Yeah. It's like, you have this G chord, you like goes with C, and then you're just like, I don't know, something, you can build upon it. And then the more you write, the more you're like, all right, like, where isn't it supposed to go? And I think that's sort of the enjoyable part, where it was almost like you've got a puzzle, and it's like, you have no image to work from though. The front cover is just white, but you've got all these pieces, and so you're like, Jesus, like, I don't know how to do it. So, but it's nice talking about it that way. So now for like the following record, or what we'll release after Night Names, I wouldn't mind doing something really heavy and just be like, here's our version of something metally. Or I've always said that because I don't know, it's interesting to listen to, and I still have sort of a strong connection with that genre, but I think it would scare people, and I don't really want to be we'd like to be the upbeat band, but then if you just come in with some big metal riffs, it's like, I don't know. You have to get it right, else it could just be so cheesy, and I'm worried about that.
I think that there's a good like mix between a lot of your songs, especially if you pick like a chill song and then go to something like Hymn for a Droid or something like that. So yeah, a metal album would definitely sound really cool though. Have your influences changed much since the start of the band to now?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, hugely. Like, I think beforehand I was like, there was this idea of what like music was, and there was so much integrity in it, and you'd look at older bands and like and be like, why would they change? Why would they do this? Like, they should stick with that because they're good at it. And I think now it's like, it took me a good couple of years to be like, well, everyone's music changes and everyone's ideas change of what they do enjoy. So for me, I went from like really enjoying the 10-minute epics, and then it slowly went down to be like, what is a song and how do you craft that? To now I sort of just really enjoy like even like 30 seconds or a minute. Like, I can't go, if you've heard like a verse and then a chorus and then it starts going back to the verse again, I'm like, oh God, no, like change it. Like, it's got to go somewhere. So like, yeah, I think, but that's, I think my patience has kind of gone a bit. Like, I used to have loads of patience with listening to everyone. To be even like, if I listen to, I suppose everyone did, but I think then we've had this like Netflix revolution where it's like you can have everything at once, or Spotify. It was like, but back when it was like, I suppose we're both old enough to understand, like, even the only music streaming platform was like SoundCloud, and you would only be able to listen to what you could. So you had to buy music on iTunes, or you bought CDs, or you bought records. So you did listen to the whole record because you just purchased it. Like, rather than now, if you don't like next. So it's like, I suppose it's kind of ruined a lot of a lot of enjoyment for some people, but it's also probably ruined a lot of bands' careers, because they're like, all right, we've just released this like hour-long epic, and then you get like 12 people listening to it. So, but it might be the best thing in the world. But no one will give it a crack.
Talking about like the evolution of the sound, even on that first record, you have a very unique sound to it. Like, it's very fresh sounding. What would you say is like the main difference between maybe like the first two records compared to Shiger and Night Gnomes?
I suppose like where we're, because we're right in the eye of the storm, feels like the same sort of continuation for us. Like, I think the production standards, like, we feel like we're getting somewhere better where it sounds better. But then I suppose in another way, it was like a lot of the guitars have got to the point where I've loved, like, it was part one was record the amp, that's the sound of guitar, record the drums, that's the sound of drums, and it's sort of like you can hear sort of bits and pieces between it, and it sounds, I suppose, clean. Whereas once you just start recording yourself, it's like, you just like, well, let's fuck that up on purpose, and let's put this through that, and then let's add all the weird effects afterwards, because you've listened to it 100 times, so you're just trying to make it entertaining for you. And then when you show someone for the first time, like, what the fuck's that? Like, why don't you just record it normally? Like, yeah, because you can't record it normally. So I think that was sort of, there's like a real good balance of like idea and production. And I think like there's only a handful of bands who do that perfectly. Like Mild High Club nail it. Like every record, it's like, it sounds great. It sounds like it's tailored to that exact sound, and the instrumentation of it is perfect. And then you go into the other like world where, I don't know, like Tool do it really well. Like, their albums sound brilliant, and then their ideas are even better than the sound. But then you sort of have the lo-fi world where I suppose we're still trying to nestle ourselves into, but also trying to bring out bits and pieces. But I don't know, like Tame Impala's another good example. Like, their first records fit that flavor, and I'm not really a big fan of their newer stuff, but you can't argue that it sounds fucking incredible. You're just like, wow, that's like, it sounds amazing. And I think that's like something that, as I've become more of a hobbyist towards like sound design and sound production in that way than I have the instrumentation way. So it's a curse, but it's also like, I feel like once you can nail both, and if you can get there, and that's like our whole journey is like trying to be like, if we can do it DIY, and everyone can listen to that first record, but like, all right, they started there. What are they going to do in 20 years? And then eventually, hopefully, we get somewhere really weird, but everyone's been like, what the fuck are you releasing in the meantime? And you're like, oh, okay, like, now I see where you're going with it. And then there's this nice sort of linear sort of passage where you can be like, maybe it takes us 10 albums to get there, but like, we'll get everyone back.
Yeah. You've mentioned like recording and stuff. You guys, have you released all of your albums yourself through a record label?
Yeah, so we do it all with What Reality Records. So that's our record that we set up. So that's in Australia. And then we had a bit of help with, so there's Marathon Records, Marathon artists in the UK.
Yeah.
All right. And then so that they helped sort of put out those records internationally, but in Australia we still do it like DIY, and with the help of like Caroline, so they distribute the records.
All right.
But I think like truly, if we went like full do it yourself, like it would be, I think we could do like 500 records at a time, or like 1,000 records, but any more than that, you'd be, yeah, I think it would cripple us, because if we're away on tour and we couldn't send them out, and then you just need someone full time, and you're sort of at the point where you couldn't really employ someone to do all the distribution. So we did need a hand sort of getting the other side of it happening, and at least they can handle the weight of, like, I suppose, all the sales and bits and pieces. But I mean, it'd be nice to evolve and do it in a way where you could have everything fully in a shop, and like we did do it ourselves. And I think that's where we'd like to head. And even if we had to scale it back a bit, and we're just like, we're just releasing 1,000 records, and hopefully that would be enough to fund the next record. So you could just keep going that way. And then every time you do release a record, it's like you put out your back catalog with it. And so maybe you sign 5,000 records at a time. And the people who missed out on the last one, they want to buy that next one, instead of doing it the way that I think the business model of like everyone tries to chime in and buy as much as they can at one time, or labels do, like, and we don't really have a say in it. So it's like, I think that's why the High Visceral Part 1 record is still sort of wanted, is because we literally produced like nothing of that. I think there's only like 2,000 in circulation. So, and the first pressing is worth a stupid amount. I was like, fuck, I gave mine to my dad and my brother, so I might be wanting that back soon. But yeah, classic supply and demand, just don't oversaturate. Hopefully that will fund future projects and future albums.
Yeah, for sure. I remember trying to get that first album of yours, but I think it had all sold out or something by the time I found you. And then you released that part 1 and part 2 together. Yeah, and I instantly jumped on that. I was like, I have to get this.
No, I really like the 1 and 2. I think we're gonna do the rest of just them by themselves, but just do a small run and see how it goes.
Yeah. Do you decide, like, with the record, it's got like the swirl and everything on that? Is that all done by you guys, or?
Yeah, like we'll talk to the manufacturing plant, and like we get to decide what sort of colors. Like there was this one like Vinyl Williams did, which was this big, like, it was called like Nebula or something. It was like, I have no idea how they made it, but it was incredible. But they also costed literally like another it would be like another $10 a unit. So you're like, Jesus, like that's just will cripple us. So I think like we're sort of choosing. But I mean, then again, if you're just creating the artwork and you're not just doing it for profits, like go ahead and make the most beautiful thing you can. I think people want to pay for that, like, design and that concept and that creative sort of I don't know, the design of it. But yeah, there's been a couple, like, I think we've left it up to we'll all decide and we'll all sign off on it, and if it looks good, we're like, sweet, that'd be cool. Yeah. But Rich is more the vinyl. He's the vinyl head, so he gets sort of final say, I think.
Yeah. With your tour now, you start in August. No, not August, July, sorry. Starting in Perth with Ocean Alley. How does it feel to play there now compared to when you first started?
Oh man, like, yeah, completely different band. Like, I feel like we were the sort of band that was quite selfish in a way. Like, we'd go out, like, it would be when you were younger, I suppose, when you're in a band, you're like, this is sick, like, let's get drunk and let's do a show. And like, it would sort of invite your friends down and then watch you get shit faced, and you'll just be there trying to jangle away and not be able to even know what you're doing or singing. No, yeah, there was no effort. It was just like fun. And I think for years we've sort of got that, like, you'd still have a good time and it'll be hectic, but we've sort of learned to sort of balance that out with being like, actually the show is like so important as a career path now. Like, you can keep going and just doing that and enjoying yourself, but it probably wouldn't, no one was going to come and see you. So it's like these couple of years where we've just been off, we've been jamming each week, like we've still been together, we're still running sets, we're still like writing, but just trying to be better musicians and try and work on a show and like step up the game. And I think because we haven't even seen anyone like internationally come over for ages. So I think the first gig we went to was the West Australian Symphony Orchestra.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so Danny's brother plays in that. And so they did the best of John Williams. So he did like E.T. and he did like Harry Potter, Indiana Jones, man, like Jurassic Park. Like, so you're sort of there, you just, and Star Wars, like, so you're just there, and it was mind-blowing, man. I was like, oh my God, the level of professionalism in this is insane. Like, and I think we're all like, let's try and be like an orchestra and then have a couple of beers afterwards. And so that sort of like mentality is stuck where we do go and play these shows now. We had a couple in Sydney where it was like so much better. Like, you enjoy the whole thing way better because you're like, fuck, like, I only fucked up once then, rather than like pinging off strings and fucking trying to wind them up and everything's happening. It's like, you're fully aware we were there. And I mean, some bands would be like, well, of course, you should be doing that at the start. It's like, well, it takes 5 years to realize, not for us.
Well, you see videos of like Slash in the 90s and he can barely walk and he's up there still.
Yeah, man. I think that we had a couple of meltdown shows when we were doing America. And there's one infamous one in Phoenix where we ended up just getting, well, we had like nowhere to go because we had accommodation in another city afterwards. We had to drive after the show. And everyone was sick, and we got to the venue at like 1 o'clock, and we weren't playing till 1 a.m. And so we had 12 hours to sort of wait. All of us were sick on pseudos, just like, man, like, kill me. And we're like, we might as well have a beer. And the pseudo mixed with alcohol and drinking for 12 hours. No one could play their instrument. I couldn't even, my tongue didn't work. And I was just singing like, and then from that day forward, never again. Like, that was awful. Like, but I think that was like a Reddit page on that. And someone was like, there's someone been like, it's the best gig I've ever been to. And another person was like, that was, I wanted my money back. But yeah, we'll be playing well from now on.
Yeah. Well, the last question I have for you, I like to ask everyone this question. If you could only pick 3 albums to show someone, what would they be?
From everyone. Okay, sick. Man, I think, well, going back, if we had to do from the beginning, this one's hard. I'd say Deja Vu, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. That ticks off like the entire folk genre. That's like Fleet Foxes, Grizzly Bear. They wouldn't be there without them.
Yeah.
Maybe I can't go past Tame Impala's Lonerism. Like, that for me is just such a perfect record. It's sick, and it just established, like, I don't know, it gave birth to the entire Australian music scene, really. Like, everyone was like, whoa, like, huge. That was just influential. And lastly, oh man, what else would I do? Something I've been cranking lately, or what do I go to? It's got to be a Beatles record, Abbey Road, like that. Yeah, just the level of professionalism that they had in songwriting, but they were happy to sort of change bits and pieces to start writing weirdness and the end mentally where everything goes together. You're just like, man, that still blows my mind. You're just like, how the hell did they do that? Like,
it's mental.
Yeah.
Especially the first half of that record. It's all like quite simple and happy, and then you get to the second half It's like, what the hell is going on?
But then like I Want You, She's So Heavy is massive. It's a monstrous song. Yeah, that is the dark. I think that, but that's had to have birthed like metal, like from there. You're just like, whoa, like And imagine some guy in the '60s like just listening to that on cans, just feel like, my God, like, it would have absolutely blown your pants. It would have lost your shit.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for coming on and having a chat.
No problem.
You can find all of Psychedelic Porn Crumpets music and their tour dates in the description below. And if you can, definitely go see them if they're near your area. Yeah, thank you again, Jack, for being on.
All good. Thank you very much, Brody. Cheers for the chat.
Yeah, thank you. All right. See ya, mate.
All good, man. Have a good day.
You too.
See ya.